We're going to start taking some questions from the audience. Am I picking, or do we have a picker out there? I'm going to pick. Sydney, do you want to start? We're giving you a chance.
Sure. I'm Sydney. I'm with People Magazine. My question's for Mr.
Oops, hold on. Mike? I'm so sorry.
Sydney, that was such good projection, though. We heard you. Very good, Sydney.
My question's for Mr. Whitaker. I'm curious, what was it like to have Miss Winfrey as your wife?
It was an amazing experience. She was so committed to the role and so committed to our relationship. So we had wanted to work together, and this gave us an opportunity. And then I think in between the scenes, where we're trying to develop our rapport and continue to build our connection, she would be so generous. Like I'd be in the trailer, and she would rub my back, or we'd walk hand in hand to the set and talk, and I think it led to the magic of like us being able to really be connected in the film. And then when I was in the scenes with her, there's a bunch of moments in the film that, of course, like in this 4-hour version that Lee first had, that I cut out now. But where like there was a couple times where I was really startled as Cecil, as the character, where I didn't know what to do by the way she was behaving. Like one time she was really drunk in the scene, she was on the phone, and I was trying to comfort her, but I was trying to get her to the couch. I just didn't know what to do. And then another time when her son died, right afterwards, she screamed and she fell to the floor. And that awkward moment that you have when you don't know how to take away someone's pain. You don't know if you should touch them, you don't know if you should help them, you don't know if you should be in the room. And those are the kind of moments that she did, and it really helped elevate, the work I was trying to do, because I was just reacting off of some of the powerful moments she was giving.
Thank you, Forrest. Thank you.
This woman in the back here, in the middle, you, yeah. But we have to get you a mic. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jazz Fly. I actually have a question, I think, for Lee and for Danny. One of the things I realized about the film is that it was so unapologetically authentic for a film about Blackness and the Black experience. How much of that came on the page, and how much of that, Lee, did you add? There were so many sort of cultural inside jokes and asides.
Mm-hmm. Danny, you want to go first? You want me?
You go ahead.
Okay. So Danny wrote this exquisite script. Danny is, he wrote Game Change, and he wrote, what was that beautiful film
Recount.
that, what was it called?
Recount.
Recount, about Florida, the Recount. So he knows the White House in a way that, and history in a way that, that is unprecedented as a writer. And so he wrote this incredible piece that, but he don't know nothing about chitlins or fatback. So it was his script. I just had to say, okay, so throw some chitlins in there. Okay, so now throw some hot sauce in there. Now throw some cayenne pepper in there. And then we got a movie.
Okay, I'm gonna throw a question. We were talking earlier, Liev, about the historical, but what excites you about this movie is the historical perspective that it brings. And can you elaborate on that? I know you have little kids, and your brain may not be tight, as tight as it can be, but.
I was rethinking, my
told
answer,
me
because
that.
you said that you were going to ask me. You said you were going to ask me a thematic question. I was rethinking, because everything right now in my mind is fathers and sons. So great pieces of art. They contextualize. They filter through the viewer. So for me right now, fathers and sons is big, and this movie really does fathers and sons in a compelling way. But what I thought when I first saw it that was so intriguing was the dedication the film has towards its perspective and how it clarifies and defines history through its own unique perspective. And I think that's how we really come to understand history personally, is our own relationship to political change, to how these things evolve in our own lives. And I think what's so unique about The Butler is it takes a very compelling and intriguing tack on perspective, being so close to the center of the political universe in the White House. This man has this unique perspective on what should be a a very political universe, and what we find out is that it's actually a very intimate one and a very personal one. And that is the timeliness of that right now, given what's going on
Right.
in our world, is pretty heavy and pretty great.
And one thing that I'll say is that if I look at our ages, I'm 50, I think 4, and we're in our 50s, we're kind of the, where were you when JFK was assassinated generation? We were little, and we didn't, I was in kindergarten when that happened and all the various things, but that shaped our generation, and when you're talking about taking this to show to people who were in their 30s or their 20s, you forget they weren't shaped by that. So there's a historical perspective that the movie brings, and that is a touchstone for each of us based on where we were at the time. Can you talk a little bit, David, being the son, and about the aging process?
Yeah, I mean, one of the privileges for me was getting to play that arc. I mean, Lee and I talked a lot about what we wanted to do with that, and we agreed that he was probably about 17, 18 at the beginning of the film, and by the end of it, he's 68. You know, a proposition I relished, but also, my goodness, how the hell do we do that on film as well? And in early conversations Lee and I had, you know, we both agreed that we wanted to have it be more about what's going on emotionally rather than relying heavily on makeup and things like that. Now, I didn't realize that Lee was going to say no makeup. In terms of being a 17-year-old. I mean, I thought you were joking. And
except when he puts his finger on your face and runs it gently down from the cheek.
Not so gently. Oh, but he wouldn't do that to you, but to me, darling.
I would always check. Actors like to trick me to put makeup on.
so, but it led to this very unorthodox thing I had to do. Of literally, the days before I was shooting anything in my teenage years, I had to get 10 hours sleep. And then days that I was a bit older, I would get 5 hours sleep. And I learned this trick of eating very salty food, lots of salty food, drink a lot of water. The water clings to the salt and puffs you out. So, you know, the scenes where I'm with King, I sort of look a bit puffier. I managed that over a course of about 3 days. And then I would suddenly have to go younger again, so I'd go in the gym for 3 hours and just be on the treadmill for 3 hours to drop 5 to 8 pounds. And so
Do that. In 3 hours, I want that plan.
Oprah and I are thinking, wow, that's a new diet tip, 3 hours on treadmill.
Saunas help as well.
Okay.
So yeah, it was that kind of process. But we had this crazy thing where sometimes I would have to go from 50 to 17 to then 30 in a day because you shoot out of sequence. So, but it was a challenge to relish.
It was a challenge.
Yeah, it was.
James, will you talk about a completely different thing? Then we're going back to questions. We are going back to questions. I just want to kind of spread the love so that, you know, that some other people get a question. Can you talk about becoming JFK?
Sure. Well, I'll preface it by saying what an honor to play this character that we all know so well, and we all have a vivid image of who he was and what he stood for, clearly. So on one hand, it was daunting. On the other hand, it was one of the most special experiences in my life. And there wasn't much. We didn't have much time, to be honest. It was like a couple of weeks before. You're playing Kennedy. You got a couple of weeks, you know. But we did a bit of a prosthetic nose and some plumpers in the cheeks, sort of just like fatten up the girth of the jaw a bit, just to, you know, get that down. But then, you know, my thing was clearly everyone's going to want to hear the accent, and again, we know him so well, and he has such a specific accent. So, what the great thing nowadays is, you know, you can download all of his speeches, so I would listen to his voice and these wonderful speeches, not only for his accent, but for his take on, and to hear these beautiful, very powerful words, again, was eye-opening to me. And so, and Lee was really wonderful in a way that he allowed us an opportunity to, knowing that we've seen the Kennedys be the movie stars that they were. We've seen them gallant and composed, and he's always the smartest guy in the room. How have we not seen them? What would an argument look like with them behind closed doors? And so it was great to have that opportunity to have a different take on it as well.
They're talking about an argument that'll be in the director's cut that wasn't allowed in this cut, but there's a
How
great...
many hours long is the director's cut?
4.
4 hours.
Yeah, no, 3.
But
But there's a scene of them in bed arguing about something right before Cecil comes in.
Another good example of that is seeing President Johnson take a dump.
That didn't make it in,
I think that's
that
really
made
what
it in this
James
cut.
is trying to
That's
articulate.
it, yeah, that's the Academy
It's all
moment.
about perspective.
It's always Lee pushing the envelope.
Okay, I want to take questions. Where's the mic now?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a woman up here in front row, and I'm going to do 1, 2, so we don't have to stop between. This woman right here in the black and white will be second.
Diva Velez of the Diva Review. Thank you so much for this required viewing. That's so entertaining. There's a line early on in the film that just struck me. We got 2 faces. One is ours, and one we show the white people. And it's one of the lines that I feel is parallel to today. And I wondered, for anyone who would like to answer, if that is parallel to your experience as someone who has strived and achieved success in a white-dominated business, and how do we get past that point?
Well, this is the face that we show to white people.
Do the other one, Frank.
I wrote that in the New York Times. I talk about that in the New York Times piece that I did about me, the 2 faces of the African American. And I think that when we bring it to light here, it was important for me because I think that as I grew in Hollywood, I had to put on a face. I had to talk with a certain diction. I had to be a certain way. I had to dress a certain way. I had to sort of present myself in a certain light so that I could get ahead. And it wasn't until I found myself that I was able to, and be myself, that I could present that, and Obama was elected, that I was able to be me, and the 2 faces met.
I don't feel that at all. I feel that I have made a living being myself. When I was 19 years old, I interviewed Jesse Jackson as a young reporter in Nashville, Tennessee. And he said to me then, one of your gifts is being able to be yourself on TV. So when I moved to Chicago and I was up against the then, quote, quote, king of talk, my boss at the time called me in the office and said, listen, we know you'll never be able to beat him, so just go on the air and be yourself. So I have made, a career out of my own authenticity. I don't have one face that I present to the white world or the black world or I talk to my dogs the same way I'm speaking right now. So it's always been the same for me. And I say that with great pride and homage and honor to the people who were the generation before me. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to be in this movie. It is because of, I am the daughter of a maid, and my grandmother was a maid, and her mother was a maid, and her mother was a slave. So the domestic worker and the speech that Dr. King gives to my son in the movie, I feel validated by their courage. I feel validated by the war that the Butler and his entire generation fought in their own way. And the fact that there's another generation of freedom writers and freedom fighters and who because of evolution and growth and change, decided we're not going to do that anymore. I think that was also necessary. So both wars were necessary for the time. But there was a wonderful poem by Paul Laurence Dunbar called "We Wear the Masks That Bend and Break," those of you who know that, that I learned as a little girl But because of the courage, because of the conviction of an entire generation whose shoulders we all stand on, I never had to do it.
Well, that's the reason why you're Oprah Winfrey, because unfortunately, many of the people that I know and what I've had to experience have had to do that.
Yeah, and obviously you would as a
As a black man, I've
as a
had to
black
do it.
man.